Hi everyone, welcome back here to the Perkins Custom Swim Bait channel. In today's video, I want to go over my top 5 ways on how to alter the action of a glide bait. So, here we go. Number 1, this is a way to do it that is most common to glide baits, okay? So, what you will do, this is my big Omer trout glide. And the reason that I'm using this is, number 1, because of how this bait is made. And this will all depend, this particular way depends solely on how the bait's made. So, as you can see here, there is a pin that goes down through these 2 eyelets to hold this joint together. All right, so if you want to impact the glide of this bait, if you want to make it wider, or if you want to make it tighter to where it can do more of that choppy motion, like what you have to do is, number 1, hopefully this pin is exposed. If you're using something like the Storm Arashi glider, like an S-Waver, you'll probably have to do some major work to try to get to the pin. But if you're buying a custom bait, you can typically, the builders usually will leave this exposed to where you can tamper with it yourself if you want to. So what you will do is you will pull this pin, and next, after you pull the pin, you will change the length of these 2 eyelets depending on what you want. So, general rule of thumb, the farther out, meaning you're making the bait longer, the farther out you go, you will actually make it more choppy, or more, it will have a tighter glide. The reason being is that joint is opening up. You're making the joint wider, so the angle of the actual, joint is going to be a much more close to a 90-degree joint. That 90-degree joint allows that bait to chop in place more of like a walk the dog kind of style, okay? Now, vice versa, if you want this to be a very wide glide that, you're going to throw it out way over a point and you're just wanting that thing to wide glide 2 to 3 feet, maybe even 6 feet to either side, what you're going to do when you pull that pin is you're going to cinch those eyelet screws in, making that joint tighter together. The closer that joint gets to where it restricts, when it starts gliding, it will restrict the motion of this joint. And by restricting the motion of the joint to where it's not, let's just say this is 60 degrees, you want to make it like 75. You have restricted the access of that joint to where it can't go any farther than 75 degrees. It has to wide glide versus being able to go in. However, this is the big caveat with turning something into a wide glide. The wider you make the glides go from left to right, the less reactive they are to your inputs on the bait. So what I mean by that is you're going along, you're doing your slow row, and then let's say you want to do a reel pop of 1, 2 to try to make that bait chop. It sometimes will cause that bait to blow out. And by blow out, I mean, the bait will turn sideways or it'll go up under, and it doesn't really matter how much extra weight you put onto the baits. Yes, adding weight will help them from blowing out, but here's the other problem. As you add weight to the bait, guess what happens? It starts sinking faster. So it all depends on what you're looking for out of the bait, but that is my number 1 way to alter a glide bait. If you really want to get to the nuts and bolts of how you change glide baits, that is the first one as far as how you alter a glide. Now, what I recommend, and what I think most builders would probably say, and if any builders are watching this video, I'd love for you to comment down below. Buy the glide that you want for that particular purpose. Don't try to make one glide do 5 to 6 different things. Oftentimes they can, but when a builder is designing a bait, typically they have an idea as to how they want that bait to react. This bait, because of its length, it's 11 inches long as far as the resin goes. It's probably closer to about 12 to almost 13 with the brush tail. To me, this is not a choppy glide bait. I personally don't throw it like that. I don't throw this as a chopping glide. I wanted this as a wide glide. I wanted it to do the slow, wide. Can it chop a little bit? As in, can I twitch my rod and it, jerk a little? Yes. Does it row? Not really. But it's not really designed for me to throw it over there next to a tree and me to start doing half reel chops and expect this thing to give me the action that I want. It's just too long. Because of its length, it's got a lot of drag, honestly, in the water, and that drag restricts it from being able to do that chop that well. So that's my number one way. And I know that we're already so many minutes into this video, and we've only hit the first one, but without a doubt, that is the number one way you'll hear most people saying that you can alter a glide is you can, increase the pin length or you can decrease the pin length. And I guess I moved my hand the wrong way there, but you get the picture. That's how you change that joint, and that's how you change the wide glide versus a narrow glide. So now let's hit the other topics that you can do. Number one, as far as if you're altering a glide bait, the next one's hook changes, hook modifications. Okay, so what I mean by that, this is my Jethro 7.5. Now, before we go into hooks, let me mention this. As you can tell, this is a completely different joint than the previous bait, the Big Omer Trout Glide. This does not have a pin. The way this joint is designed is basically an interlocking screw within itself. So these are connected. You cannot remove or change this particular bait's joint by messing with like the actual hardware of the joint, these two pins here. So the only way to really alter this bait is you would actually have to file down this edge to give yourself a narrower, you would need it to actually make it more of a 90-degree angle joint. You would have to remove resin. Now, with that being said, this bait chops really well. I don't have a problem chopping this bait. A lot of how this bait chops so well is due to how it is designed on the belly. It's more of kind of like a V on the belly, and that V allows it to kind of cut through the water. So that is why I have this bait kind of doing a lot of the similar things to a chopping style without having to use the pin design. So that is this bait. All right, so next up for everyone is going to be hooks. So number 2 on how to alter a glide bait is going to be your hooks. Now, I know that doesn't really sound like, well, how would the hooks alter the glide bait? 2 ways. Number 1 is going to be rate of fall. Number 1 is going to be rate of fall. The thicker gauge that you use of the wire of the hook, for example, going from an ST36 owner going up to like an ST56, you went from a 1X wire to a 3X wire. Greater amount of wire, thicker hook. Thicker hook, increased weight. So as you increase the weight of that, you're changing the rate of fall. Now, with that being said, you also, by increasing that weight, can actually deter the action of the bait somewhat because you've increased the weight. So what you have to be careful about is on that back treble, more specifically with the back than the front, but on that back treble where the joint here is going, the bait is swimming through the water and it's going, but as you're increasing the weight back here, you're actually changing as to how much drag that back section is going to hit in the water. So what you want is thinking about, okay, if I want to upsize my back treble in the sense of increase the wire, potentially downsize the treble. Go from a 1/0 to a size number 2. You'll probably have the same amount of weight as the builder put on it to design it. But what you've actually done here is you've kept the weight constant and consistent, and you're able to basically keep the bait running how it was. So that's how you can increase wire thickness without altering rate of fall, is downsize the hook. Now, I also mentioned rate of fall just based on how the builder builds versus how you are desiring to run the bait. So what you can do is you can upsize your hook, go from a size number 1 to a size 1/0 or to a size 2/0, not changing wire diameter, still staying with a 1x wire. But what you're doing is you're increasing weight to be able to cause that bait to go down faster. Now, with that being said, I mean, you know, it sounds kind of contradictory, really, as to increasing the size back here. But, you know, as you increase size, you're also increasing weight. So does the increasing in the weight not mess with the back of it at the same time? And it can. But honestly, if you play with the front hook more, you can get it to where the head will almost go down kind of like this. So, and this is really getting into almost somewhat of the physics of fishing a bait. But as you are going down and the bait is sinking, you have your line. That line creates drag in the water. So actually what ends up happening is it's kind of going to reverse itself. So especially as you start pulling the bait, it'll level out. The back hook is definitely the one where you can see the action get challenged on. All right, number 3. This is the third way to alter a bait. That is lead strips, suspend strips, tungsten putty, tungsten stick-on weights, however you desire to do it, but you can alter a bait that way. And where you do that is you can do it a couple of different ways. Personally, I like wrapping hooks. As you can kind of see on the Big Omer Trout Glide, that hook is wrapped. It's got a bunch of lead tape right around that hook shank. It's not interfering with the amount of gap between the hook points and the actual shank, so it's not really going to deter any bites or getting caught or getting fish to get hooked up. You can also place tape on the bottom of it, just like your jerk baits and things like that. You know, you put suspend strips, suspend dots on the bellies of the baits. So simple little ways there to be able to alter the glide bait by altering the sink rate if you want to fish it deeper in the water column. Also, if you're having issues with a bait that is not standing upright as you run it in the water, you can increase the weight on the belly to add ballast to the bait. That will help some too. It just depends on the bait and how the maker was designing it. All right, number 4. This one is one of mine that I have dove into really bad the past couple of years, and I am really trying to fine-tune this as to how I personally like to use it. All right, number 4 is line, fishing line. I know it doesn't sound like it because you're thinking, okay, well, how am I altering the glide bait with the line? The line makes a lot of difference. For example, if you switch between fluorocarbon to monofilament or vice versa, fluorocarbon sinks, you'll automatically get more depth out of the bait throwing it on a fluorocarbon line. So, number 2, this one is the one that I got into more than anything, which was line diameter. I went down this rabbit hole of looking for line diameter, figuring out what am I actually trying to achieve with the bait. Okay, for example, monofilament line most of the time has a thicker line diameter than fluorocarbon. So does that mean if I'm fishing 20-pound copolymer, more than likely you're fishing about 25 to 30-pound fluorocarbon to do a like for like in the actual diameter of the line. And the reason the diameter matters, not the pound strength. You know, we all think, okay, here's this is the fluorocarbon shock leader that Sunline sells. It says 20 pound in giant letters. We all think in the sense, okay, 20 pounds, 20-pound line. The break strength might be 20 pound and that might be the same, but what's not the same will be the diameter between the lines. So line diameter, as you get thicker line, creates more and more drag in the water. As you create more drag, it can greatly interfere with the bait's action in the water. The smaller the line, the more action the bait will have. This is the same with like crankbait fishing, jerkbait fishing. The lighter you can go, typically you get more bites. Now, with that being said, big swim baits that weigh 6 ounces, you can't go super small because otherwise you're going to be casting them off every other cast. So you have to find that happy middle ground. Now for me, I like to play in the ballpark of 12-pound test and up. And it depends on what type of line I'm throwing, depends on if I'll go to 12-pound test or not. That 12-pound, that is for my copolymer. P-Line CXX copolymer is about the same size as 18 to 20-pound fluorocarbon by Sunline or Seaguar. They're pretty close. You can kind of, a good rule of thumb is when you're on Tackle Warehouse looking for line, if you're going to fish in the summertime, monofilament copolymer is great because the fish are going to come up anyway. Wintertime, fall, early spring, when you're thinking, okay, I got to get down there to those, that's when you're needing that fluorocarbon. So think about it from your the time of year you're going and where you're trying to get that bait position in the water. So that's how line size is greatly going to impact your glide bait. It's going to mess with the action of it, good or bad. It's not to say that messing with the action is a bad thing. It's just to say it will alter the action. And then secondly, think about your diameter of that line based on what you're trying to do. Because I've fished copolymer, downsized the line on since a pound test equal to that fluorocarbon. I've never had a break. I have no issues. The kicker with it is I'm able to go down that low because I'm playing with diameter, not with pound test. All right, I'll hop off my little soapbox there for line because I'm a huge advocate for really fine-tuning line because I think line is such an important area. But all right, I'm gonna hop off that now. Last way, and this is one that most people think about, most people talk about it, but it is a huge deal when you're fishing a glide bait. And that's with a snap or without a snap. My personal favorite way to do it is with a snap. I fish every single glide bait that I build with a snap. I feel like it gives the bait more action in the water because it's automatically created a loop, an additional loop, and then I can tie my line directly to the snap. It gives the head a little bit more of a free action. That's me personally. I know a lot of fishermen that fish big glide baits and they have no issues and they prefer to do it direct line tie. So it's personal preference. Can it mess with the bait's action? It can. It adds a little bit of weight to the nose of the bait, so you're automatically going to potentially get a little bit of extra drag down. Honestly, I've never had that impede the action, but it's just things to think about that it will add a little bit to the nose. So those are my top 5 recommendations on how you can alter a glide bait. These, without a doubt, are nowhere near the end of that, but these would be the top 5 things that I would look at when I'm trying to alter my glide bait to do a certain thing. So I hope this information helps you. If you really have any additional questions, or if you've got some great recommendations from me to try, as well as just something that I've missed, please put those down in the comments below. I love to read comments. I read every single comment, and I do respond to every single comment. So I really encourage that. I really appreciate it because it takes you time to write that comment. I'm going to write back to you, and I really appreciate them, and I enjoy reading them. Please give the video a thumbs up. It helps the YouTube algorithm get this video out to more people and gets us to be able to grow our community here, to be able to help each other. Please, if you haven't already, hit the little subscribe button down below. It is completely free, doesn't cost you a thing. All it is it helps us grow our subscriber base to where anytime new videos come out, you'll get a little notification about it. And if you hit that little bell, you'll definitely get a notification. But that concludes our video on how to tune a glide bait. Once again, I appreciate everyone taking some time to watch this video, and I will see you in the next video.